Honorable Prime Minister. जी अभी प्राइम मिनिस्टर साहब का रिप्लाई होगा.
Madam Speaker, I join all members of Parliament in expressing our grateful regards and thanks to the Honourable President for the gracious address that she has presented to both houses of Parliament. Madam, the debate has been vigorous. Several issues have been raised which deserve the attention of the government as well as all other entities. And I am therefore very happy that Parliament is functioning as it should function. There is a couplet in Urdu which says something like this: कुछ ऐसे भी मंजिर हैं तारीख की नज़रों में, लम्हों ने खिता की थी सदियों ने सजा. During the last 3 months, when Parliament was not allowed to function, I often felt that we were passing through one such moment. I thank all the leaders from all the political parties for their sagacity to end that stalemate, and that the House is functioning normally as it should function is a tribute to our country's deep and abiding commitment to contribute everything in our power to strengthen the parliamentary institutions in our country. Madam, I have listened with great respect to the speeches that have been made. I was not present all the time, but I have extensive notes. Shri Rajnath Singh ji, Shri Mulayam Singh ji, Shri Sharad Yadav ji, and Shri Devi Gowda ji, and many members from our side, Mr. Chako and Mr. Tiwari, they have made very many important points. I will try to answer as many as I can, but I think the gist of the concerns of Parliament is captured in paragraph 6 of the President's speech, where the Honourable President lists the foremost priorities for our government in the year 2011 and 12. Number 1, to combat inflation, and in particular to protect the common man from the impact of rising food prices. Number 2, to address frontally the concern regarding the lack of probity and integrity in public life. Number 3, to sustain the momentum of economic growth while ensuring that the poor, the weak, and the disadvantaged get a fair share in the fruits of growth. 4, to maintain an uncompromising vigil on the internal and external security fronts. 5, to pursue a foreign policy which will ensure that our voice is heard and our interests are protected in global fora. This, I feel, Madam, captures the gist of the concerns which members have expressed. Some have appreciated what the government is doing. Others have criticized that our efforts have been inadequate, half-hearted, and some people have also questioned our motives also. I have always believed that in parliamentary system, one can debate only if those who take part in the debate, their motives are not questioned. If people start doubting intention, I think that's not good for the healthy growth of the parliamentary system. Madam, with regard to inflation, I will be the first one to admit that inflation in the last 18 months has become a problem. There were reasons beyond our control. First of all, there was a drought of 2009. There was natural calamities which affected the production of important products such as vegetables and onions. And there was the international environment where the oil prices have been rising. Now the oil per barrel costs as much as over $100 per barrel. And internationally, the world food situation has deteriorated. World prices are rising of commodities like oilseeds and vegetable oils which we import. There has been a sharp increase in prices. On all these things, we have no control. But there are also commodities where we can control prices. And I would like to inform the honorable members of this House, through you, Madam, that as far as the cereal prices are concerned, the fact that we have large accumulated public stocks with the FCI and public procurement agencies, we have been able to stabilize prices of cereals, wheat, and rice. There have been problems with regard to vegetables, with regard to meat, with regard to milk, but some of these things are beyond control. The government policies is to ensure that we control inflation, but in a manner which we do not hurt the growth of employment opportunities. And I respectfully submit to this august House that if we had a ham-handed approach, we could have killed the growth process, which is the only source of providing jobs for our youth. So this delicate balance which has to be preserved between control of inflation and protection of employment, I think that sometimes gives a feeling to ordinary people that we are not worried about inflation. That's not the case. Our government stands committed to control inflation. I am hopeful that at the end of this fiscal year, the rate of inflation, at least the headline inflation, will come down to about 7%. Food inflation has also been a cause of concern, but in recent weeks, the situation has improved, and I expect the situation to improve. But in the long run, in a country like India, where agriculture prices are the kingpin of the price structure, the only way we can control inflation is through increased production and increased productivity of agriculture. I think Mulayam Singh ji, Devi Gowda ji expressed concern about the plight of farmers. I share that concern about the farmers not getting a fair deal. Our effort by way of fixing the procurement prices we have tried to give sufficiently remunerative procurement prices for sugarcane, for wheat, for rice, but there are commodities where procurement system cannot be extended. Therefore, if the commodities are perishable and they are in short supply, there is no mechanism to control them. The only way in the long run to control inflation is, as I said, is to invest in agriculture, and that's what we are committed to. There may be some defects in the functioning of various schemes, the Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana, the National Food Security System, but I don't think this is an issue which should divide the House. The government is very serious and it takes very seriously its commitment to do everything in our power to strengthen the growth impulses in agriculture and to strengthen the growth of productivity. We have to strengthen the public distribution system. Public distribution system is the kingpin of our strategy to stabilize prices of food grains. And Madam, when we come forward with the National Food Security Bill, I am confident that we will expand the frontiers of our ability to control inflation, and that commitment I give to this August House, that we are working to bring to this August House at an early date a bill to consider and approve the system of national food security. Madam, the second point that I wish to address is, and which the President has highlighted our attention, is to address frontally the concern regarding the lack of probity and integrity in public life. I will be the last person to deny that some unfortunate developments have taken place in the area of telecom, in the area of Commonwealth Games. Those concerns are being addressed. As and when we got credible, actionable evidence, action has been taken. Chief ministers have resigned, ministers have resigned, the CBI has been on the trail of wrongdoers, and I assure the Honorable House that there is nothing that we will not do in order to clean our public life of these aberrations. With regard to telecom policy, Madam, I would like to place before this House a few things. My own view has been that as far as the telecom policy that was sought to be implemented by the United Progressive Alliance government, the basic policy, there was nothing wrong with that. And it was consistent with the advice given by TRI. It was consistent with the objective need that we all felt at one time, that the maximum tele density must become accessible and an enforceable target. And if you look at the figures of tele density, when our government came into office, let's say in March 2004, the tele density in rural areas was 1.55%. In the urban areas, it was 20.79%. The total for the country was 7.02%. In the last 6 years, when we look at December 2010, the tele density in rural India has gone up by 31.18%, to urban areas 147.88%, and the total tele density in our country has gone up from 7% in March 2004 to 66% in December. People talk of scams, and if there is a scam, it must be dealt with. The law of the land must punish the wrongdoers, but we must not overlook also the fact of this tremendous growth of the telecom sector, which has taken place as a result of sound policy pursued by our government. In 1999, the then NDA government changed the system of allocating telecoms resources. The national telecom policy was needed at that time because the operators could not honor their earlier commitment which they had undertaken through the auction process. So the auction process was reversed in 1999. In its place, there was put in place a revenue sharing business, and our government, by and large, has continued on the same path that was laid down in the national telecom policies. And I think that policy has paid rich dividends. People ask me why then all this concern about wrongdoings? And my respectful answer to that is that when I looked at the telecom situation in 2007, 2008, the proposals that came to me that the ministry had decided not to go in for auctions, at that time had the support of the technical arm of the telecom regulatory system, the TRAI. It had the support of concerned ministry, and I felt that for level playing field, it was entirely appropriate that we should continue on the path which we had followed until 2007. There were then subsequently, it turned out that while the policy was sound, the way it was implemented, I think it gave rise to problems. Those problems are now being looked into by the JPC. They are being looked into by the PAC, and if there are any criminal aspects of it, they are being looked into by the CBI. Our government will fully cooperate with all these agencies, with all these entities, to ensure that the truth comes out and the guilty are not punished. Madam, with regard to the Commonwealth Games, we have had a very successful Commonwealth Games. Despite all the doubts that we all had at one time, the Games were a great success, and the gold medal and the other medal tally is so impressive, and I would like to congratulate the youth of India for their excellent performance in the Games. Even before Games had concluded, there were complaints of wrongdoing, and from the ramparts of the Red Fort on 15th of August last year, I had promised the country that if there have been anything wrong things have been done, we will investigate that matter, and if found guilty, nobody will be spared. And that commitment stands. The high-powered committee is sitting, looking into the various aspects. Its first report has been received. Government has been prompt in taking effective action in line with the recommendation of the report. Other matters are being looked into by the investigation agencies. In all these matters, I think it is our bounden duty and my promise to this House, we will not flinch from ensuring that no wrongdoer escapes the penalties that our legal system provides. Madam, third issue which has been agitating the minds of some people is this Antrix Deva deal with regard to the transponder lease agreement which was entered in 2004. I would like to place certain facts before this august House. The Antrix Corporation entered into a commercial contract in January 2005 with Deva's Multimedia Services for lease of true transponders to be built by ISRO. This was done under its own authority, but Antrix needed government approvals for operationalizing the contract. These were not given. In particular, the operating licenses and regulatory approvals from various ministries were also not given, and hence the contract did not become operational. In the light of complaints that emerged and the growing national security and strategic requirements, the government undertook a review of the contract in December 2009. This was followed by a decision of the Space Commission in July 2010 to annul the contract. Since then, the government has taken a policy decision that in the light of the country's strategic requirement, it will not be able to provide orbit slot in S-band to Antrix for commercial activities, including for those which are the subject matter of existing contractual obligation for S-band. Action has been taken to annul the contract in pursuance of this decision. I wish to clarify, Madam, that no allocation of terrestrial spectrum has been made by the government to either Antrix or Devas, and therefore the figures of costing being quoted by some members of lakhs of crores have no basis in fact. I should also like to mention to this august House, Madam, that the decision to open satellite services to non-government parties, Indians and foreign, was taken and approved by the then government in 1997. This was not the Congress government. Thereafter, the norms, guidelines, and procedures to operationalize this policy, including the modalities for pricing of lease of transponders, were approved in the year 2000 under the NDA government regime. The government has set up a high-powered review committee on February 10, 2011 to review the technical, commercial, procedural, and financial aspects of the agreement, to suggest corrective measures, to fix responsibility for lapses, if any, and to review the adequacy of procedures and approval processes followed by Antrix, ISRO, and Department of Space, and to suggest improvement. Madam, having said this, I wish to say that our country takes great pride in the spectacular achievements of our space scientists. The government is fully committed to preserving the integrity and excellence of India's space program and the honest effort of our scientists. Madam, the third issue relates to sustaining the momentum of growth while ensuring that the poor, the weak, and the disadvantaged get a fair share in the fruits of growth. Madam, the whole world admires India's economic growth performance in face of the unprecedented global economic crisis of September 2008. Wherever I go, people ask us, how is it that a country like India can maintain the growth path of 8, 7.5, or even aspire to a 9% growth rate when the whole world is caught in a depression mood. And I think it is a tribute to India's industrialists, it's a tribute to India's farmers, it's a tribute to India's workers that we have managed to sustain the rhythm of the growth process, and that even this year our growth will be as high as 8.5%. I take this opportunity to compliment my colleague, Shri Pranab Mukherjee, for the handling of our economy. I have often maintained, Madam, that meaningful solutions to the problem of mass poverty that still prevails in our country can be found only in the framework of a rapidly expanding economy. Rapid economic growth of the last 4 or 5 years has enabled us to generate more tax resources. These resources have been plowed back more and more into support of the flagship programs for social inclusion, for economic inclusion, and that's the only way in which we can solve the problem of mass poverty, ignorance and disease, which still afflicts millions and millions of our people. So I urge all the honorable members that while we debate issues, we can find faults, but the message should not go out that India is adrift, that India has lost its way, that the enthusiasm for getting this country moving forward is something which is no longer in evidence. I assure you, Madam, our government is committed to achieving a growth rate of 9 to 10%. Our government is committed to ensure that the bulk of this resources for this growth will come from domestic sources, that our savings and investment rates, which are as high as 35 to 37%, will be given every opportunity to make their contribution to sustaining the growth process, and that we will use more and more of these resources to strengthen our facilities for education, paying particular emphasis to the education of the girl child, paying particular emphasis to the education of disadvantaged sections, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, minorities, and other backward classes. Madam, this year's alone, post-matric scholarship scheme for the scheduled caste students will benefit 46 lakh students. It is an all-time record. This is a process we need to carry further to enlarge opportunities of gainful employment for all our children, for all our youth, particularly the youth coming from the disadvantaged section. Madam, I have already mentioned our commitment to bring to this House a national food security bill, which is under preparation, and if that comes about, it will supplement the efforts that were made through Mahatma Gandhi NREGA, National Rural Employment Guarantee Program, to wipe out the tears of the suffering mass of our country. I do not say that we have in the last 5 or 6 years been able to abolish poverty. There is acute poverty, particularly in certain parts of our country, tribal areas, and we recognize our obligation to do more to help those areas. But we have at least put in place a mechanism to soften the harsh edges of extreme poverty. The Mahatma Gandhi Narega scheme has provided a floor to the incomes of agricultural laborers when they cannot get employment in any other way. A minimum wage of 100 rupees, now it is indexed, and in most states, therefore, it would have risen to 130. A wage of 130 per day, even for 1 month, for if jobs are available for full 100 days, I think that provides a significant relief to these persons. Their earning capacities goes up, and therefore there is a social safety net built. If we bring in a food security bill which provides food at sufficiently low prices, that would further strengthen our anti-poverty program, in addition to the programs that we have with regard to the scheduled castes, minority children, education, and other welfare programs. So that's, Madam, the only way in which we can move forward, and I commit our government to revisit our flagship program. If there are weaknesses, some people have said there are weaknesses, there are leakages in these programs. Mahatma Gandhi, Narega, there are weaknesses. I do recognize the performance varies from one part of our country. There are excellent examples. It will be our effort to stress upon the state governments to plug those loopholes, and that's what we wish to do in order to strengthen the growth impulses of our economy, to strengthen also the redistributive aspects of our development process by paying special attention to the needs of disadvantaged sections, minorities, backward classes, and other poorer sections of our community. Madam, one issue which has been raised from time to time, and it was also raised during the last election also, was with regard to black money. Madam, we all want to clean our system of this menace. But we all know that black money accumulation is not a product of the last 4 or 5 years. It has been there for a long period, and we have made attempts to deal with it. The economic reforms of '91 were one such attempt to reduce the scope of discretionary powers of the government at the center, so that there would be less scope for arbitrary practices, less scope for collection of the black money. The economic reforms process has helped to revive our growth impulses. At the margin, it has also helped to reduce the scope of black money. But I would be the last one to deny that we have a long way to go. We need more competition in our country. We need more competition in our country to stimulate our economy, to promote efficiency, but at the same time, we need a regulatory system to ensure that there is fair competition, that the basic purposes of having an environmentally friendly policy are not ignored. There is a delicate trade-off between environment and development, and we can neglect neither, and therefore we need a very sensitive regulatory system. But if we talk of a regulatory system, we open up the scope of discretion as well. And therefore, we have to revisit the regulatory framework in order to ensure that while we recognize the need for having a sound regulatory system, it must not degenerate once again to a new way of bringing back the license permit right. So that's one dimension of controlling the generation of black money through economic activities. The other source of generating black money is tax evasion. And I venture to think that over the years, particularly since 91, our tax system, both direct and indirect, has moved in the right direction, and that on balance there is less scope for tax evasion today than was the case. And the evidence is quite clear from the handsome figure of the rate of growth of the central government's tax revenues. But there are new sources, criminal activities, human trafficking, narcotics. All these have become also more important as our economy grows. These practices also have unfortunately tended to grow. And therefore, in order to deal with the black money, we have to tighten that part of our regulatory framework, supervisory platform, which can counter these tendencies and control these tendencies and prevent wrongdoing. Action has been taken. Pranabji has held a press conference. We are approaching, if this money is held abroad, we are approaching the relevant authorities. If there are legal restrictions, we are trying to negotiate new legal treaties which would provide smoother flow of information. And I wish to assure the House that on this question of black money, particularly black money held abroad, we are one with the opposition in saying that everything should be done to bring back this money to India because it belongs to us. This is not the issue which should divide the House. We will sit together with all parties and seek their help and suggestion how far we can move, at what pace we can move. We are absolutely open when it comes to dealing with black money. All constructive suggestions will be welcome. Madam, I come to the fourth issue referred to by the President, that we shall maintain an uncompromising vigil on the internal and external security fronts. Internal security of our country is faced with many challenges. There is the terrorist challenge, there is the left-wing extremism tariff, there is the problem of insurgency in some part of northeastern states of our country. I am not claiming that we have succeeded in getting over these problems, but they have been contained. With regard to acts of terror, the efforts made by my government and our Home Minister to strengthen the internal security system in our country, the National Investigation Agency is in place, the Multi-Agency Investigation Center is in place, counter-terror steps are being strengthened, and the results are there to see, but there is no scope for complacency, and we shall remain ever alert to ensure that the terrorist elements do not succeed in their nefarious designs. Terror is something not which can be attributed to any one religion. The terrorists have no religion. And therefore, we have to create a climate where terrorism of any hue, will find that this country will unitedly face that menace and overcome this menace.
Minister refer to saffron
Please
terror.
take your seat. Please.
Why did he refer?
Please, let him complete the reply. Kindly take your seat. Yes, Honorable Prime Minister.
That is one of the many hues.
Madam, with regard to left-wing extremism, we have to deal this matter with firmness, but also with great sensitivity. We are dealing with our own people. And I will be the last one to deny that sometimes it is the economic deprivation which draws people into the folds of left-wing extremism. And therefore, we have to have a two-pronged strategy. We have to have a strategy of development, of giving ray of hope in their future to the communities of tribals, communities of central India, where this left-wing extremism is raising its head in a vicious way. And that's why our government has drawn up an integrated development program for 60 Naxalite-affected districts. And that's a program which should grow in intensity, grow in depth in years to come, so that the tribal youth are not misdirected into the folds of the left-wing extremists. At the same time, we have to strengthen the law and order machinery. Adequate steps are being taken to help the state governments to deal with this menace, to deal with this challenge. If more is needed, it will be available. You can depend upon, Madam, the central government's keen desire to work in partnership with state governments to get mastery over this menace of next-wing extremism. Madam, with regard to the Northeast, the situation in Manipur and some parts of Assam has been a cause of concern. But overall, the situation has improved. And more recently, the main insurgent group, ULFA, its leadership has thought it fit to give up the path of pursuit of violence and to enter into discussion, dialogue with the government. I welcome that. I have been trying to reach out to ULFA right from the year 2005. At one time I succeeded, but later on they backed out. I'm very happy that they have now accepted our invitation to discuss, to have a dialogue. They've given up the path of violence. That's a very positive development, and we should encourage, I think, both sides to work out arrangements which will lead to satisfactory outcomes of these discussions. With regard to Jammu and Kashmir, Madam, we have passed through a difficult time, particularly the last summer. But since then, the situation has improved, but we keep our fingers crossed. I think come this summer, I hope we will be vigilant enough to ensure that the unfortunate events which took place in last summer in part of the Jammu and Kashmir do not take place. Our approach to the problems of Jammu and Kashmir is that we will give no quarters to secessionist elements. We will do everything in our power to strengthen the hands of the state government, to provide a fairer deal to the youth of Jammu and Kashmir to provide avenues for gainful employment. I had appointed a group under Dr. Rangarajan to work out a plan of providing 50,000 to 1 lakh jobs to the Kashmiri youth. That report is now nearly ready, and I hope that once we start implementing, these are precise proposals where the Indian industry commits itself to take for employment Kashmiri youth, and if we can create jobs for a lakh of students from the valley and other parts of Kashmir, I dare say it will change the mental makeup or the mindset of the Kashmiri youth. It is obligation of all political parties to do nothing which would disturb the peaceful atmosphere that now prevails in Jammu and Kashmir. As regards foreign policy, Madam, our policy has been to be as friendly as possible with our neighbors. I have maintained, and I still maintain, that the full development potential of this subcontinent of ours will not be realized unless India and Pakistan relations are normalized. I have been working for that objective since 2005. Some progress was made, but then there was a lapse, and the terrorist elements would, of course, not allow the process of normalized to go ahead. But I am convinced, and I believe there is a growing conviction in Pakistan as well among the thinking population that terrorism is not an instrument which can be used by any civilized government as an instrument of its state policy. I sincerely hope and believe that the new ruling classes of Pakistan would grasp the hands of our friendship and recognize that whatever our differences, terror as an instrument of state policy is something no civilized society ought to be using. I am not saying that we have today an atmosphere in which negotiations can go forward. But there are hopeful signs. The foreign ministers, after the meeting of the two foreign secretaries in Thimphu, have agreed to resume the process of dialogue, and that's the only way in which we can resolve our problems. I have always said that we are willing to discuss all outstanding issues with Pakistan, provided Pakistan gives up this practice of allowing use of its territory for terrorist act directed against India. With regard to Sri Lanka, the return of peace to Sri Lanka, we sincerely hope will enable the Sri Lankan government to pay greater attention to the requirements of providing a fair deal, including political devolution to the minorities, particularly the Tamil minorities. We have been impressing upon the government of Sri Lanka this requirement, and we will continue to impress upon them that it is their solemn obligation to ensure that the Tamil minority gets an honored place in the polity of Sri Lanka to lead a life of dignity and self-respect. From time to time, Indian fishermen run into problems, and there have been recent incidents in which some of our fishermen have been shot at. Some large numbers were arrested. We took up this matter with Sri Lanka. These arrested fishermen have been released, but these frequent, I think, attempts to frequent attempts of creating tensions between the fishing communities of our two countries is something we have to find a permanent solution, and we will continue to impress upon the government of Sri Lanka that they should not do anything, that even if some of our fishermen stray into their waters, I think they should arrest them, but they should not kill any one of them. That's not something which is acceptable to our people. Madam, overall, India is respected in the world as never before. Whenever I go abroad, people marvel about the existence of a country of 1 billion people with all the diversities, with all the poverty of its masses, yet trying to seek its economic and social salvation in the framework of a functioning democracy, in the framework of a democratic polity, in the framework of commitment to rule of law, commitment to all fundamental human rights. I sincerely hope that whatever we do, we should take pride in these characteristics, because we are 1/6 of the human race. If India succeeds in finding its economic and social salvation through democracy, through commitment to rule of law, to respect for all fundamental human freedom, I dare say we will become the harbingers of a message of change for the better for the entire third world countries in the world. India, therefore, has a message. That message is one of strengthening democracy. That message is strengthening the forces of secularism. That message is this persistent quest for gender equality. That quest is that development must lead to social and economic equity. These are the guiding principles given to us by the founding fathers of our republic. These are the principles which will continue to guide our government, and I hope these are the principles of whose pursuit can unite all members of this House on this side and on that side. And on that note, Madam, I once again thank the Honorable President for her gracious address, and I request the House to pass the bill.
A number of amendments have been moved by members. The motion of thanks. Please take this. Please take this. Please take this. बैठ जाइए, आप भी बैठ Please take your seat. आप बैठ जाइए. Yes. Nothing is going
मैडम
on.
स्पीकर, ये एक मिनट। मैडम स्पीकर, मैं एक क्लैरिफिकेशन केवल माननीय प्रधानमंत्री से चाहता हूँ, यदि आपकी इजाजत हो। मैं
आप बैठ जाइए नाले जी, कृपया बैठ जाइए।
मैं
Yes.
अध्यक्ष
Just ask
महोदया,
one clarificatory question.
अध्यक्ष महोदया, मैं आपके माध्यम से माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी से एक क्लैरिफिकेशन चाहता हूँ कि चाइना के संबंध में मीडिया में तरह तरह की खबरें पढ़ने को मिलती हैं, और चाइना जितने भी भारत के स्ट्रेटजिक लोकेशंस हैं उनको रेल मार्ग से, सड़क मार्ग से, वायु मार्ग से जोड़ने की कोशिश कर रहा है, और पाक ऑक्युपाइड कश्मीर में भी गिलगिट और बाल्टिस्तान, यहाँ पर भी जिस तरीके से उन्होंने अपने बंकर्स बना रखे हैं, तो उसको लेकर इस समय समस्त भारतवासी चिंतित है। तो मैं प्रधानमंत्री जी से यह जानना चाहता हूं कि फैक्चुअल पोजीशन क्या है, वस्तु स्थिति क्या है, कृपया वह सदन को अवगत कराने का कष्ट करें।
Madam, thank you, madam, for
Just
giving.
one clarificatory question.
Yes,
please.
just
Very brief.
due to unseasonal rainfall in the state of Odisha, the farmers of the state has been hit like anything. And the central team, as per the request made by the Chief Minister of Odisha, the central team has already visited and already submitted the report to the central government. but
you so
I
much.
am sorry, sir, no relief has reached or no announcement has been made by the center. So I like to request the Honorable Prime Minister as well as all the senior ministers who are present here. The people of Odisha, the farmers of Odisha, they have suffered a lot, and you all know. And the report has reached you. So please announce something. Because all other
Thank you
states
so
have been
much.
provided.
Thank you.
So
Thank
please,
you.
Andhra and Maharashtra, without having visited the state, they have been provided. I don't have a growth. But please,
Thank
I
you.
don't have growth. But at the same time, please announce something.
Honorable Prime Minister.
Madam, I do recognize the need of coming to the relief and rehabilitation of farmers,
कृपया शांत रहिए.
and the farmers of Orissa are as much deserving of the central government's attention as farmers elsewhere. The Honorable Finance Minister has just now informed me that the high-level committee has cleared the reports of this yesterday, the central teams.
Please.
All Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, it has been cleared.